and gentlemen, in this corner, Eddie Gagnon! And in the opposite corner, Kristen Gagnon! This is What's Special About Special.
I wanted to say that.
Well, hello there. My name's Eddie Gagnon.
Eddie, I don't want to be here all night.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name's Eddie Gagnon. That was perfect. Kristen.
Your voice. On today's episode, we would like to use our platform to shed light on the most recent events occurring in our country.
Joining us is our daughter, Annabella, who is a student in the public school system. And also we have a close, dear friend, Miss Janyce, or as we like to call her, Auntie Janyce.
During this episode, we mentioned some fantastic resources that Janyce brought to us, and we really want to highlight them. So please check out their fitness challenge at Brittany Liz Strong or at OMG It's JPre, supporting the Loveland Foundation. Please listen to the rest of this episode for more information.
Well, hello. Welcome, folks, to another episode of What's Special About Special. Today we do have a special guest, Janyce, or Miss Janyce, or as we like to refer to her in the Gagnon household as Auntie Janyce. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me.
Well, you're very welcome. And then we also, considering this is a very special episode, we do have Annabella Gagnon.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
We have our extra special second guest today.
So, Kristen, why don't you go ahead and roll with the credentials of our guests?
Yeah, well, I want to start by saying that today's episode's a little different than our typical episode that we normally put out. We realized that we were going to air another episode for this week, but with everything going on in the world and everything kind of going on this week, we really wanted to bring a different set of resources to the community. And we felt that this might be the best way to do that. We also realized that in our household, there's been a lot more conversation this week particularly, but all the time, but really this week particularly, around what's been going on in the news, and specifically the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's been happening. And Annabella has had a lot of things to say about that, in very articulate ways to say them, probably better than both me and Eddie can say. And we felt that it was important to let her have a voice as well. And we thought it would be a really interesting voice to hear from her as not only our daughter, as a child, as someone in our community, and somebody who is a student and is in this community as well. She's got a lot of peers who are people of color. She has a lot of peers who are not. And we live in an inner city where we see a lot of different things in the community, a lot of different people all across the board. And so I think that she's got a lot of great views on what's going on right now. And we wanted to give her that voice. But we also understand that she's 12 and that's a different mindset, and that us as parents have a responsibility to kind of help guide her through what's going on. Right. And we understand that teachers have a responsibility, whether or not they want that responsibility. It's kind of handed to them when they're in a classroom. It's a little bit different of a dynamic outside the classroom right now during COVID. But we thought that having Miss Janyce, or Auntie Janyce, on to speak with us to talk about what she kind of does in the classroom or outside the classroom as it is right now with her students would help kind of us with this conversation as well. So
awesome.
Sorry, that was a long rant. But.
Yeah, it's okay. And so I guess what we had decided for this whole episode is we do want it, of course, to be just an open conversation. I guess to completely acknowledge the elephant in the room is to acknowledge the fact that, Kristen and I we are white. We've had that privilege of not having to deal with the social inequalities and the injustices that are endured by people of color every day. But again, we find it would be irresponsible of us not to address these current issues right now, especially because, in my opinion, us being that privileged and having that ability, we need to use that platform. I think that's one thing that we can acknowledge. One thing that I'm trying to learn and trying to literally engulf myself with is to make sure that the actions that I'm taking, not just the words I'm speaking, but actions that we do as well, are going to be benefiting the future, benefiting the equality, and benefiting the end of this injustice that we face every day. So that's where I think all of this really originated from. I'm honestly, I will try to keep my emotions down, but in the wake of all of this, I just every day I've been struggling emotionally. Like, where do I find myself and where I can put myself to better the situation? But that's where I feel like this episode is going to be very, very special in that way, where we can discuss this. It can be an open conversation, but in the end, I want to be able to know what I can do more, what actions that I can take to, again, contribute to the evolution that we need, the end of this injustice, the end of the inequality,
especially as a parent too, right? Like how we can.
I would say, and Bella, this is where I would like you to come in. We're fortunate that Bella goes to a great school where she has great teachers, and we just have great mentors and teachers in our lives. Thank you, thank you very much, Miss Janyce. But in that, today Bella was engaging in a conversation with her peers, and honestly, when I reflect on that, when I'm witnessing and hearing that there's other 12-year-olds that they're addressing their fears, they're addressing their concerns, it is absolutely heart-wrenching to me as a parent that these are the things that are on our children's minds. Like, these are adult content things. Our children should be worrying about who left off being it when they were playing tag at recess, not we need to address social inequalities in our own schools. Like, those are things that I just can't. I have a really difficult time wrapping my head around, and I want to be a contributing factor to make these things better. I don't want to talk about what is happening. We acknowledge what's happening. I feel like a voice of where we can go from that, and a voice that can create answers or just kind of, brainstorm about answers is where we need to go. Bella, I would like to turn that over to you.
Bella, why were you interested in being a part of this episode?
Well, mainly because as a 12-year-old student in a school where I do have friends who I know for a fact don't get the amount of privilege that I get. They don't get they are facing social injustice. And I think it's really, really terrible. And I very, very, very much want to be a contributing factor to be able to stop these issues. Because, to be honest, the things that are going on right now, in the world with racism, it's really just terrible. It's terrible. And it's, I really can't even explain how terrible it is that these are things that people have to face. And
go ahead.
Oh, I feel that I want to help people that face social injustice because I hate the thought that somebody has to feel like that every single day. That somebody has, a friend of mine or a peer of mine at school has to fear walking home from school. I want to be able to fix that. Because every person that I see or I meet, instantly, I feel that I need to make everybody feel like...
You want to make people feel comfortable when they're around you.
Accept.
Yeah. I think that I really don't like it when I don't feel accepted or uncomfortable in a space, and I never ever would wish anybody like that feeling. So I just want to make sure that nobody's feeling that way and that we can all feel like we're in a safe environment. So
I think that's important.
yeah. So I really want to help to make sure and like that every person, every friend, every peer, every human being on this earth feels as though they are treated with respect, they are comfortable in the environment that they are in, and they know that they are loved. And so the reason that I got into it was just basically I want to help and I want to be able to make a change.
Well, I think that's big.
Thank you.
That's huge.
Well, thank you, Bella.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we have the child's perspective, but as Miss Janyce being involved in the school system, the public school system, and honestly, in my opinion, you're a great advocate for, social equality, just the things that we talk about in our conversations that we had previously, and just, where you stand politically, I think is huge. But where do you find yourself trying to make those differences in your students, and where do you see the ability to make those changes or to help with those improvements?
I think firstly, we all just kind of have to realize that no one's perfect at this. Nobody's 100% going to get it right every single time. But the first step is, the willingness to try and the willingness to put yourself out there for the kids, because when the kids see that you're a real person who has the same kind of thoughts that they do and they want better for their lives, better for other people's lives, and they pick up on that. Something I do every year in my classroom during Black History Month is I always show my kids this particular cartoon. I think it's called My Friend Martin, and I watch it every single year. It's like a 45-minute, just these kids go back in time, they meet Martin Luther King Jr., and that's kind of our segue into talking about diversity and racism and what types of things were happening during the civil rights movement and what types of things are happening now. And even though I this year teach second graders, they pick up on those things and they say, oh, well, we don't have to ride at the back of the bus anymore. We can pick our spots on the local transit bus. And, we go to school with all sorts of kids of every color. Well, so-and-so's white and so-and-so's black, but we're allowed to go to school together. And I feel like as adults, we often think that, or just assume, I should say, the kids don't have complex thoughts about social justice, about race, but kids are already thinking about race and who's around them and what's fair and what's equal and those kind of equity conversations, even
Right.
at that low little 7-year-old level.
Right.
Well, I think that's what the big thing is. Like Bella watching, I don't think we know Bella has, we say it all the time, like we're aware that Annabella speaks and has thoughts in a way that it might be beyond her years at 12. Because she's the only 12-year-old we're talking to. But sitting during COVID, she's been on all of these Zoom calls with her classmates and her teachers. And it's in the same room that I'm working in. And so I'm able to kind of hear these calls. And the one today with her teacher, I will say that I was thoroughly impressed with the fact that her teacher was, open enough to just say, it was a music class. And for her teacher to just be able to say, open enough to say, hey, your assignment today is to give some thought on what's going on in the world right now and come to class with that. And how is it affecting you? She, to be able to just say, lesson stops, let's talk about that. And then these students, she gave them all a moment and a voice to say, how are you feeling? What's going on? I'm going to be honest, we kind of do that here in our house, but I would assume most parents don't think when me and Eddie are talking during the day, we're talking about current events. We're talking about what we saw on Facebook. We're talking about what we saw on the news. I never usually think to turn around and go, hey guys, how is this affecting what's happening with you? When it's definitely probably affecting them. So for the teacher to turn and say that to the students, listening to the students' responses and how articulate they were and what their thoughts were, a couple times I turned around and looked at Bella like, wow. I mean, they were thoughts I wasn't even having. And they knew more about what was going on than I did. They were informed. They were thinking very logically. They were very middle ground, just saying, well, this isn't necessarily fair, but I think this, and just being very, understanding of the situation. And they weren't looking at all the negative, because one, they're not all over Facebook like the rest of the world. So they're not seeing all the bad, all the good, because unlike adults, they're not all over the media. They're just seeing the facts or hearing what's happening, and they're forming opinions based on that.
Right.
It was really interesting to see it through a child's eyes, of just a really innocent look on things. And there are times that we say, you're not fully informed. Let's have a conversation about that. I mean, right, Bella? There are a couple times that me and Daddy have said to you, that's not 100% accurate.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
But as a whole, she's coming from a really genuinely honest place and forming these honest opinions.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, why don't you tell me things, and I'll start voting that way, because you seem to have a much more genuine view on things.
Yeah, and I understand, even in that Zoom call that we were doing today, I understand that I didn't vocally participate very much, and I know that I should have, but I do think that if you're just listening to the things that are really going on, and to people's facts and opinions, that is going to change you. That's going to make a difference in what you think you need to make an impact on. I was just sitting there listening to all of my peers' opinions, and I kind of just thought, we all are well informed. I didn't participate, but I definitely took something away from it. And as long as people are listening and they're hearing the things and the facts and what people are saying, you're going to be able to take something powerful away from everything that's going on.
Right, but that's participating, Pumpkinhead.
I think you participated without knowing you're participating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I know the school that I work on, a big push this year, and it's actually built into our curriculum, is how to build a community of learners. And it's not just about learning the academics, but teaching the kids how to be open and honest with each other, and comfortable being vulnerable or being wrong or being right, and listening to their friends who are wrong and right, and learning how to have a conversation with someone without jumping in and saying, no, that's not right. And being able to accept, somebody else's idea that's different than yours, being able to give a different idea than yours, and give yourself reasons of your backup. Why do you feel this way? Or asking the question, well, why do you think that? That's interesting. Or I disagree, or I agree because da 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 da,
Yeah. Now, is that how do you feel? I feel like that is the foundation of making these changes.
Yeah. I think that this push in curriculum, or not in curriculum, I'm sorry, this push in community building is going to be the biggest way for us to make change in the classroom, and the biggest way for us to make change in our community, because these local protests are going on. Many of them were started by students because they're open and willing to listen to each other, and they're being their honest selves, like you said before. They know what it is that they want, and they know what it is that they believe is fair and equitable and the right thing to do. And they're helping their communities see it the same way. And I think that those kinds of things have to start when they're young. They have to start when they're little, down to what's better for lunch, pizza or popcorn. I think pizza's better because blah, blah, blah. I think popcorn's better because blah, blah, blah. But learning how to be a citizen of your classroom is going to help them learn to be citizens of the greater community, going to help them be able to have these really hard conversations later on, where as adults we get caught up in that Facebook, you're wrong, no, look at this article, no, you're wrong, look at this article. We didn't have that foundation, or maybe some of us did, but obviously not enough of us did.
Right. Well, or the foundation was thought of as right, but the black and white of right and wrong, and not necessarily black and white, but there's a right and a wrong, and there's no in between. And And I think that was probably born out of something else, just because maybe there wasn't an alternative at some point. Maybe it was necessary that there had to be someone right and someone wrong. And so it kind of birthed this whole generation of someone just has to be right on this and someone has to be wrong on this. And there's no room for a gray area right now. And so I don't know where that stemmed from, but it seems like
pride. It stems from pride.
It seems like I don't know if it's a generational thing, but it seems that there's a generational shift where there's a generation that happened for. And then there's this generation that, people can complain about millennials and under, but they do have a different view on things. And for whatever the society might think they're lacking in, this is something that I feel like they're not, with this whole community feel.
Right.
And that is where something's maybe going to make a change. And, I think with that same group of people are using social media differently. They're not using it in the same way. And the hope would be that whole part of media that's only showing the yes and the no and the good and the bad and the right and the wrong will probably fade, because I know that there's so many people I know, and I'm the older side of the generation, but the younger generation either don't have that type of social media or just don't use it. They scroll through, they don't click on it. It's just not their cup of tea.
They're just kind of learning to embrace that gray area of like,
yeah. They're using the TikTok and the Snapchat and the Instagram instead of the Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's just not their thing. So the politics are out of the picture for it. And hopefully that makes a shift in how things get out there and how information gets kind of sent out there, and then people see something differently. And it's not to say, like we've said this many times, we know that there's stuff out there that shouldn't be happening. Like Bella said it really, really well earlier. She said, I know that there's bad things happening that shouldn't be happening during protests. And I know that there's great things happening. But she was, for a straight day, she kept coming to me and saying, but this and this and this. And she was only naming off negatives. And I said, there's a ton of positives. We have to find that. Let's talk. You can no longer talk to me about a negative. It's easy to talk about the negatives because that's what the media is showing.
Right. That's the big push, and that's what everybody wants to hear. Like, look, you're wrong.
It's clickbait.
Look at this.
Yep.
This proves my point because your point is bad.
On both sides.
Yeah. Exactly.
Both sides are doing that. So
exactly.
But there's so much of the opposite happening, and that should be also shown. And then people like the kids can also make their opinions as a community and decide how to kind of move forward with that.
I feel like at this point in time, we live in an age where if you search deep enough, you are going to find an opinion that coincides with yours. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I feel like that is a little bit of a problem, where you have these people who can have, these most like ignorant, closed-minded ideas, and they will get support from other people who are just as ignorant and closed-minded from them. But then you also have the same thing where, it is the same thing. You have people on the other side of the far other side of the spectrum who can do the same thing, and you're just manipulating the situation when 95% of us are just like, we just want to be in peace. We just want each other to understand each other. We just want each other to respect each other. What we're having today is we live in a society today. We live in the most peaceful, I know it's hard to think about it, but we do live in the most peaceful time, because now when you have technology and you have this information that's able to be spread across the world, it's milliseconds. It's really hard to get away with putting 10,000 soldiers against 10,000 soldiers and watching them slaughter each other. We don't have those things. Still, there is crime. There's still bad things that happen. There's still social injustice and there's still inequality. Absolutely. But I think what's happening now is just like the saying, it's darkest before the dawn. When you're about to, the biggest fight anything will put up is right before it's dead. right before you neutralize that threat. So I feel like we'll hit a peak of racism right before it honestly is squashed. But we have to bring it to that point. We have to.
I feel like that's gross that has to be like that.
But look at, when you logically look at everything, that is the cycle. They talk about the circle of life, the cycle, and history repeats itself. All of these great things, they're all sayings for a reason, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be this maximum peak, and everybody's like, look how devastating this was. Let's never do that again.
Yeah.
But then we'll do it another 50 years down the road.
Then we'll do it again.
Exactly.
And again, and again, and probably one more time for good measure.
Janice, go ahead, Bella.
Sorry, but I think that we should not have to do that. We shouldn't have to go through a really, really, really terrible situation to figure out that this is wrong. If people just thought about something before they actually did something that was going to cause a terrible effect on so many people, we would be in a much better place. If people used their brains before they did something that was ignorant, we would be in a much better place.
So, Bella, how do you think that we get to that point?
I
think we teach people to think before we get to that point so that we don't have to end up there.
Well, I do think that it's going to take a very, very long time, because it's a very, very difficult thing to be able to fix. But I think that we should start with people that hold the most amount of power and tell them and convince them that we need to be doing this because it's wrong. Then those people of power have an effect on millions upon billions of people. So we get the people that hold the most power to tell the people that they hold power under. And if they hold enough power, they're going to be able to tell enough people. And it's just a game of, I mean, it's like a game of telephone. And the game of telephone that we're playing is to be able to spread the message across millions and billions and billions and millions of people. And tell everybody about what we really need to do, which is think before you act. Think about what you're doing before you actually do it. Us as human beings don't think before we act in our daily lives. At least 3 times a day we do things without thinking.
It's called impulse, but
is that
are those statistics you're throwing us at this?
I like that fact, too.
I like you.
I feel like that was the perfect child way of saying, don't boo, vote.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was just going to say, Bella, like, I think, more importantly, like, I think it's hard to tell someone in power. I think we try it all the time. People march on Washington. People go to their state senators. People go to the government. I think it's the step even bigger than that is vote the right people into office that you think will get the job done. And that is hard. I think we've talked about this a lot. We know people that we've helped try to get into office that we really truly believe in, and sometimes money wins out, and the bigger candidate that has more money is going to beat out that candidate, and that makes it really difficult for voices to be heard. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, we definitely have, felt that it's never going to be clean. I know politics is a word. It's like a verb and a noun. It's like, it's everything, but like, it's politics. There's a game behind it. You have to have the right person that can play the game and play the way you need the game played. It's finding the people that will work right. I think the hard thing is that people are just tired. So the only people playing the political game are the people that just like power. They're power-hungry people. Me and Eddie have said this many times this week. Power breeds trouble lately. Like when
when the serfs are fighting amongst themselves, they can't rebel against the king. And that's what we have. Right. It's easy to split. You have For example, right now, we have people that are fighting the social inequality and social injustices against a group of people that feel like they're trying to keep our nation from collapsing, and then the people that support them. When both of those parties are looking for the same thing. And that's the hardest thing. It's just what we're looking at right now is, in reality, there has been a 400-year war on a group of people due to the color of their skin.
Right.
And that is the main philosophy to what we're dealing with right now. And I feel like every power will try to get you to stray from that concentration. They will try to get you, well, look at this and look at that, look at that. No. Stop. It's not a smoke show anymore. It's not. And it won't end. It won't end until there's actually things that are done about this, because we have seen it. I'm done. I am done with these issues. I honestly, I haven't watched that George Floyd. I can't watch that video. I can't watch a man's life be taken in front of me, because that's not the fact that it happened is enough. I don't have to watch a video. I just have to hear that, and then, in my opinion,
you know what though, Eddie? Like, you don't have to watch that, but people, I mean, listen, I don't think that anyone should be watching someone's life be taken on, national news or TV or anything. That's somebody's family member, that's somebody's child, that's somebody's something. So I don't think that should be on anything. I think we've talked about this on other things. Somebody jumps off of goes bungee jumping and the cord breaks, and I don't think that should be on some stupid viral Reddit thread either. But I see the power behind that being out there, and I see the argument that other people have for why that's out there, because there are people, you don't need to see that, because you know the power behind those 8 minutes and 46 seconds as they are.
Well, so from
somebody else doesn't comprehend that.
Right.
And that video may be enough for them to go from this side of the line to that side of the line.
Right. Like,
and
something I've said for a long time, obviously, I'm Black, is,
no way.
Lives matter.
What?
And who would have known? I mean, people listening might not know. I get told that a lot. It just goes to show, like,
that's another conversation.
That's a different conversation for another podcast episode. However, my brother calls me, like, his tree hugging liberal bleeding heart sister, and I really embraced that nickname, honestly, even though he kind of meant it a little bit as like a jab, but it's fine. It's cool. And I had a close friend who was like, well, all lives matter. All lives matter. Right. No one's saying that they're not. However, we've got a problem. And she just kept on and on and on. And when this George Floyd video came out, and then a few days later, the video about the man in Central Park came out with the girl screaming on the phone, acting like she was in so much danger because she knew what type of power her voice had, when all that operator could hear was her voice. And then a few days after that, during a protest, these college kids were taken out of their car and tased. And she texted me and she said, I've had enough. Like, I understand what you're talking about now. And that was really powerful to me. Like, I've been preaching this song purple in the face for so long, since the hashtag started, and you're getting it, but you're getting it because you watched that on TV. Mm-hmm. You watched that moment on TV. And this is a reality that Black people in the United States can't escape. Like, I don't get to take the skin off. I don't get to take off a uniform. When I leave my classroom at the end of the day, I take off my teacher keys. I take off my teacher clothes. And then I'm mommy. I'm Auntie Janyce. I'm the sister, the friend, whoever. My work life is behind me. That's my other life. But I stay Black. I can't change that. And I think that's something I want the kids to know too, you know, like you can't change what you look like on the outside, but what's on the inside is the really important part. And we should value what's on the inside of everyone, whether they agree with our opinion, whether they want to say things that we don't want to listen to, but you still have to value that is a someone, that's a person, that's a human being at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Eddie made a really good analogy that I felt like was really powerful. Like, I get.
Oh, I stole it. So just remember, I stole that. I said that. I stole it.
You stole it. Okay. Well, why he brought it to my attention. Why people, I get why people, say all lives matter. I get that because maybe in their life, a police officer or somebody else is extreme. Their life is so important to them because I think that there's a fear that they, again, see on the media portraying police officers or whoever as all bad. So they're concerned for the safety of their police officer, family or friend or whoever, and they want to make sure that they're saying, everybody matters. Please don't put or pigeonhole our police officers or whoever that they're caring about into that same pile. I totally understand where they're coming from.
So, of course,
go ahead and explain it.
I refer it in if you're listening to the podcast because you're interested into hearing what we have to say, you've probably heard this analogy, but the house on fire. Of course, all houses matter, but when the fire department comes, the house that's on fire needs the water right now. And in today, right now, Black America is burning. And it is up to us to acknowledge that. My house doesn't need water. I don't need anything. But what I need to do is I need to rush over to that burning house and I need to help put it out, period. And to acknowledge that is to that's when you put yourself aside. And I think we live in a country where it is this me first, a very selfish, instant gratification kind of country. And when people don't feel that or they don't have that, they feel like they lost control. They feel like their freedom's taken away, whatever it may be. At this point in time.
It's a fear-based country right now. And
right.
It's understandable.
And if I want more freedom, if as American, I feel like my freedoms are being attacked right now, then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fight for people to have more freedom. That's it, period. So freedom is equality. Freedom is liberty. Freedom is justice. So I'm going to fight for a group of Americans that are dealing with this injustice and this inequality. That's what I'm going to fight for because at the end of the day, I'm fighting for my rights. I'm fighting for the American rights. And when you think a Black American is different from a white American, then that's another issue that you have inside yourself. Because if I'm fighting for another American's rights, I'm fighting for my own rights, period. That's it.
Right. I saw this really good I don't want to call it a meme, but I guess it was a meme. It was like equal rights are for others does not mean less rights for you.
Exactly.
It's not pie.
Right. It's not.
And that really stuck with me. I was like, I want that on a bumper sticker or t-shirt or something. Like, it's not pie.
Yeah.
It's not pie. We're not fighting over pie. We're just asking that when you look at me or when you look at my daughter or when you look at my students, you're not looking at them any different than you would look at me or my daughter or my students if they were the same complexion as you. You know, that doesn't mean that people are innately great or innately good or innately bad. It's just everyone deserves to be treated on the outside as we are on the inside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which sounds super cheesy. I feel like I say this so often. Treat other people how you want to be treated.
The golden rule.
Treat other people how you want to be treated.
That's
like that.
No, that's my religion. That's it. It's a perfect philosophy because that does it. It takes that responsibility. You now are taking that responsibility onto yourselves. You're saying, hey, listen, if I want this respect, then obviously I have to give that respect. That's it. When we talk about the actions and stuff that, that more than just speaking out and posting memes and saying that, I'm a freedom fighter on Facebook. I think what it comes down to is, in my personal experience, what I'm learning from this is that, honestly, I will never find myself being the person to film. I will never find myself being the person that's just documenting the situation. I need to step in immediately. I need to use the power that I have to interject and to make sure that if I'm ever a part of a situation like this, I will make sure that I do what I feel is right, and I'm going to step up.
So I want to just interject and say the person filming that was a teenage girl.
No, and I'm not saying it's part of her not stepping in. It's just
I just want to
that's
say,
what I
for
reflect
anyone who
on.
doesn't know, it was filmed by a teenage girl. Probably couldn't have interjected and was fearing.
Absolutely.
In her thought, I could just, knowing Annabella and knowing any teenage girl, thought was probably, and considering everything going on, was the only way she probably knew to help in the situation was to at least document. And to be honest, what help she did, because if she had not documented that situation, where would we be right now, and what would we be talking about?
Right.
Those 4 men would not be charged. I can almost guarantee that.
Yep.
Right.
There would have been a conversation about, it wasn't 8 minutes, it wasn't this, it wasn't that.
Oh, it was all these other reasons that they've already tried. They've already tried it.
Right. So the fact that that video is there, the fact that that young girl had to witness that, she should get a ridiculous amount. So yes, I understand that for you, I want to say that is your privilege. You are a strong white man.
But that's the thing is, that's where I have the power, and I need to use that. Like, that's where I need to take that advantage, use my opportunity to benefit others, because that is my obligation. Honestly, that's where I am in my spirituality. Like, I am nothing unless I'm helping others. What are you at the end of the day? Right. So, and I'm going to use that privilege.
And I think it's really important, Eddie, that you're not feeling like, oh, I don't want to say the word privilege, because people get caught up in this. Where's my white privilege? I struggled. I was poor. We have food stamps. We get government cheese. But like,
yeah, we did.
Yeah, I still acknowledge the inequality.
Who doesn't know me in real life, which is probably most of your listeners.
There's not that many of
them. My family is white, but I'm black. I'm adopted. Like, I kind of grew up a little bit benefiting from, having a white family and growing up in a mostly white town 85 to 90% of the time, and having that privilege doesn't mean having white privilege doesn't mean that your life is not hard. It doesn't mean that you didn't struggle. It doesn't mean that there were not, situations of animosity. It doesn't mean that you had to climb and crawl your way to where you are now. It just means that your skin color was not what made your life hard.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
I think, have you ever seen, there's this fantastic video, I saw it on YouTube or Reddit or somewhere. I'm like, I go down Reddit rabbit holes for hours at night. I have a problem with me with that. But it was fantastic. I saw it a couple years back, and it's a high school, and they're all out on a football field. And I don't know if you've seen it, and I'm probably going to say it wrong. And they're all standing in a line.
You want me to say it?
The coach or the teacher, the gym teacher, I don't know who he is, coach or teacher. And he's saying, if you ever win a day without a meal, step forward.
No. If your parents are still, he listed off all the privileges. So if your parents are still together, if somebody pays your cell phone bill, if you've never had to help your parents with the bills,
right?
So all the privileges, they got to step forward.
So he's labeling them one by one by one, and as he's doing that, they step forward one step, and you can see as people kind of drop off and drop off and drop off, and everybody that's dropping off, there are people of color dropping off. There are white people dropping off. And there were things that in my life I was thinking, I wouldn't be stepping forward for some of these things. And I would have been one of those kids as a high schooler. And I would be thinking to myself, this doesn't feel good being the one that's left behind. but you are being left behind in life as well.
Right.
And that's the message. It's not necessarily like, oh, well, you have privilege and you do not. It's that when you don't have those extra privileges in life and that you don't even know you have, and it's okay to have them. It's okay that you have these privileges, but just be aware that you had them. And that's what got you to that step, even not as a person of color, but somebody who had maybe less privilege, but still privilege. They're in the special needs community. The whole point of this is to say, we understand not everybody has the privileges we might have to find these resources. Let's bring them to you. It's the same idea. That's the point of today's episode. We just want to bring more resources to somebody who might not have access to those. They're out there.
Exactly. They're there.
Yeah.
You might need a little help to find it. And, that's where we come in as teachers, as community members, hey, I see you need this. Let me help you. If I can't give it to you or I can't get it or help you make it, well, let's find somebody who can.
Yeah.
And if more people were willing to embrace that, mentality, I think things would be a lot different.
Well, I think you said it best, like earlier when you said like that, how the school is kind of adapting that mentality, but that community mentality. Community is a big word in so many different ways, but figuratively, It's a big word as well. Like community is a big word, and we need to remember that whenever we move forward in things and when we make choices and decisions. Like Annabella said, when we make a choice, we need to be thinking about the choices we make, and we should be thinking about our community before we make those choices. Who is this affecting? Why is it affecting somebody? I think I'm impressed, Annabella, that you think that way. I don't know, I don't think it came from me and Dad, because I feel like there are not many times we've been like, other than when you're in trouble.
Came from me. I'm like the most empathetic person like ever.
You are.
Like for real.
Janyce is going to take credit for that one.
It came from
You were very, very influential in her.
Although I wish I could.
I don't know. It's those preschool foundations.
Those early years.
Which is it's huge though.
Yeah. And and there was and there are things I saw, like I'm sure many people saw this, of policemen driving their cars through crowds of people. Like they're trying to shut us up. They're trying to make us be quiet so that they can keep doing these things. And frankly, I don't think it's going to work, because this is something that really, really, really needs to stop. And it's in multiple millions of people realize this. Billions of people realize this. So they're gonna try to shut us up. They're gonna try to keep running cars through crowds of people. They're gonna still use rubber guns. They're gonna still use tear gas.
Rubber bullets.
Right. Sorry. But it's not going to work. I don't believe it's going to work because we're using our voices so much. And I think that we just need to keep using our voices, and we need to keep fighting and fighting and fighting, and it's going to get to a point where we're going to be able to do it, but we can't give up, because then they're going to win. People who are the bad, they're not all of them are bad, but the specifically not so good policemen or bad policemen.
No, Bella, again, it's actually not the police. It is the system.
The system.
And
Okay.
when we talk about the system, it's just it is a group of people that have collaborated together where this is an agenda for them to keep a separation.
I think we talked about this earlier, not to go on a whole nother tangent, but that, there are some bad police officers, and more probably, not just some, but that there's a bad system in place. And when people that are put into a position of power who are systematically not someone who should be put in that position because they themselves are maybe the type of person that get off on that power or have just the wrong wiring to be put into that position, they are going to use that power for negative, for the wrong ways. It's the same reason why a man in a position of power is going to abuse a female or use that position of power in a negative way. Or we said it the same, like the best analogy I could use was you never hear someone say the soldier is bad. You hear them say, if someone's complaining, you hear them say the military is brainwashing a soldier. Like if they're talking negatively about the military, they're never saying the soldier is messed up. They're saying the military brainwashed the soldier. You know, they're using the system as the issue. And I think that if that's how they feel about that, I'm not saying those are my views. I'm just saying that if that's how they feel about that, I think it's the same. Like the system as a whole needs to change before you can change 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 bad cops. If you have a police officer who has racial tendency, you know, racist tendencies, or gets off on power, you know, it's probably the same police officer that beats his wife when he gets home.
Right.
Or just even emotionally abuses his wife when he gets home and doesn't even know he's doing it. But now he has a position of power that he can use whenever he wants, really.
Yep.
Every time he feels like pulling a car over.
Right.
And if he just has those free reins, then it's just going to continue to happen. So that system needs to change. It needs to come from the top down. It's not going to work from the bottom up.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, well, yeah. Sorry,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. But yeah, that it's they're trying the system then, I guess, is trying to shut up the people that are trying to make a positive change.
Yes.
And it's a fact that it's a positive change.
Why do you think that's happening? Do you think it's because if the voices are heard, then the system is in trouble, right? Because
because then they are the ones that have to change the things that they want to do. They're the ones that have to change the issues that they're creating. And they don't want to change that because they just want to keep doing what they're doing. And that's not okay, and that needs to stop. And it's really stupid of people to think that they can just keep doing it without getting punished, because they're going to end up getting punished, because we're going to have loud voices and we're going to be strong and we're going to keep pushing through and we're going to make a difference.
I love that you keep saying we.
Same. I wrote it down. I'm probably going to hang it in my hat. Like,
put it right next to that.
Oh, I love you.
It's just I'm saying I so many times and I hate it.
We.
Yeah.
Well, but
No,
yeah,
how you feel.
personally,
I feel.
Me personally cannot say I'm going to make a difference, because we are going to make a difference. People who are trying as a whole are going to make a difference. It's not one specific person. It's not me. It's us.
Yeah, but you have to provide that energy. That's you.
Okay, but I'm not the only one
plenty of it.
trying. It's everybody. It's all of these people who are at these protests, who are signing petitions, who are donating. They're not just using the hashtag, even though using the hashtag, sure, it's spreading awareness, but people aren't just using the hashtag, which I think is a really great thing, because they're not just using that. They're signing petitions, they're donating, they're going to protest, they're emailing, like, people that are, I don't know, like, in charge of this stuff.
They're senators.
Yes, those
Their
people.
states, their representatives.
putting their money where their mouth is.
Yes. Specifically right now, you know, there are plenty of people of color in the special needs community who maybe have children that are nonverbal or other reasons. And this is even a scarier time for them right now, knowing that, you know, their child is nonverbal. Me and Daddy talked about this. If little Eddie was a teenager or whatever, and he was stopped by the police and he was nonverbal, let's say, and didn't know how to react to a police officer, he probably would just be approached in a way of, oh, this child or this kid doesn't know how to react to us. The police officer would respond that way, not thinking, why is this child not responding? But if a child of color or a teenager of color was not responding to a police officer, historically, they're not treated the same way. The response is held differently.
Well, I think with that it's a little bit different because I think that really, I really don't think that the average police officer would I'm not saying that they wouldn't react differently to a person of color versus a white person. I don't think that is. I think that yes, they probably would, and possibly react a little bit differently. But I do think that I do believe that a police officer would have a little bit of concerns and reaction towards both.
I think the fear is that I think there's a fear at this point that they have to be prepared for that everyone has to be prepared for anything and be prepared in case that's not the situation, because there's a fear at this point. Historically what's gone on.
Right. I'm just saying, I think that, I don't know if, any people watch the show Atypical, but it's a really good show. And in the show, the main character, Sam, he's autistic. He is approached by a police officer, does not know to react, and kind of doesn't respond to the police officer. And he is white, so the police officer has a lot of assumptions. So I think that it doesn't necessarily in that type of situation. Maybe, yes, it would have a stronger effect if the person was a person of color. I think that the reaction would be a little more aggressive. But I think that for all races, I think that the police officer, their immediate reaction is, are you on drugs? What drugs are you on? Those are just the immediate reactions of a police officer. And I think that in general, what we need to be teaching our police officers is how to properly react with people of color, which I think should be taught a long time ago. And I think it shouldn't be something we have to teach now.
How about properly react with anybody?
Yes. I think it should be how to react with people of color, which police officers obviously need to know to learn. Quite a few need to learn that. And I think children with different special needs, they want to be independent. They're being independent. That should be celebrated. And I think that they should also, I think that a police officer should look for different signs. I think that they should learn more about all disabilities also.
I think that's the key. I think I understand what you're saying, because in the Atypical episode, it wasn't that the police officer approached him appropriately. It's that he approached him inappropriately, correct? And he didn't handle the situation well because he didn't understand that he had a disability.
Right. And that's not necessarily their fault.
Are you saying that you're thinking that in any situation, the police officer may not handle that well?
Yes, in any situation with any race.
At the end of every episode, we do like to ask our guests if they had 30 seconds to say anything to our community, what would you like to say?
I just think it goes back to what the original conversation was. Building that community, starting at home, building that community inside of our classrooms, teaching our kids that it's okay to disagree with somebody, and it's okay to politely teach someone something they may not know, open their eyes to a new perspective. And it's okay to let other people have the same rights that you have. Because like I said earlier, it's not pie. There's enough for everyone. And am I allowed to put in a shameless plug?
Of course.
Oh, yeah, all day.
Okay, shameless plug. You follow Brittany Liz Strong on Instagram, or myself, OMG, it's J Pre. We are starting a fitness challenge with donations going to the Loveland Foundation. And the Loveland Foundation is a nonprofit that is committed to showing up for communities of color in unique and powerful ways, with a particular focus on Black women and girls. And their resources and initiatives are prioritizing opportunity, access, validation, and healing, especially to those with mental illness. So you can visit them at lovelandfoundation.org and give them a little donate.
Nice. We'll link all that to our episode. I like that.
And so, Annabella, just like we like to do at the end of every episode, we do ask our guests, if you had 30 seconds to speak directly to our community, what would you like to tell them?
there is a change that we need to make, and we need to keep fighting, and we need to keep pushing to make this change, because if we stop, it's just going to keep happening. And we can't get lazy. If we can push through this fight and we can really succeed in this fight, the world is going to change for the better more than it really ever could. Like, this would be a very, very big opportunity. It would be a very good thing for us to succeed in.
Awesome. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, Janyce, and being a guest on the show. And
thank you for having me. I was secretly for like months being like, what can I contribute to this show?
Please, you can come on.
Yo, Janyce, I swear to God, like me and you have like that mental like connection, because that's exactly, I was like, we got to find a way. I would love to do a show with Janyce.
Oh, we know. You could have your own show, the two of you, all day long.
Wait. So, Janyce, I'm going to call you. We're going to make a proposal. Yeah. Thank you, Kristen, for the idea. I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, please make sure you share with a friend and leave a review.
You can find all the resources mentioned in this episode on our Facebook or Instagram on @specialaboutspecial. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.